T, static, and the first 50, 3 September 1939, Scarborough, North Yorkshire. The wireless hut smells of damp wool and hot valves. Rain stings the window panes as a gale rolls in off the North Sea, and the operator's headphones hiss with a bed of static that never quite sleeps. Leading aircraft woman Elsie Turner settles into the leather-cracked chair, fingers poised above the log sheet. The Hallicrafter's HRO receiver hums under her palms, a red pilot light like an ember in the blackout. She eases the tuning knob until a thin, reedy signal pulls into focus. A fist of 5-letter groups begins to clatter into her ears, brittle as glass. QZPHT, WGJRM, KSPHX, she writes, neat and fast, noting time group Z, frequency, call signs. Wind rattles the hut. Somewhere outside, a motorcycle coughs to life. You could be standing behind her shoulder, watching the pencil move and the pencil smudge, knowing none of these letters will mean anything until they travel the chain. The message goes to Bow Manor Hall, the War Office's nerve center for the Army Y Group, where switchboards blink under paint that's never quite dry. Clerks stamp the intercept with a control number and funnel it into a basket bound for Buckinghamshire. Before dawn, a dispatch rider in a waxed coat straps the canvas pouch beneath his arm, kicks the Triumph into gear, and vanishes into the hedgerow, splashing through a country at war. Bletchley Park isn't majestic. Not yet. On that first day, the red brick manor and its odd Gothic gables watch impassively as bundled figures hurry across wet gravel to prefabricated huts that shed heat like kettles. Inside Hut 6, Gordon Welchman, pipe angled like a compass needle, talks in hushed urgency about German procedures, indicator systems, predictable greetings, the human habits that might betray a key. In Hut 8, a tall mathematician named Alan Turing cups his tea and stares at an Enigma schematic pinned under thumbtacks. "We can mechanize this," someone murmurs, and that word, mechanize, is a promise more than a plan. The first winter is a study in scarcity. Too few trained intercept operators, too few hands at the park, too few bombs and too many wires strung like ivy over nail-studded boards. They keep to 8-hour watches that creep longer when a message resists. Midnight to 8, 8 to 4, 4 to midnight. The rotation bites and then becomes the bloodstream. It is said later that in those early months they could count the weekly successes on their fingers, 50 decrypts on a good stretch, each one lifted like a coin from a dark well. Still, a process takes shape. A Luftwaffe intercept from a Y station is registered by the index. A clerk with ink-blackened fingertips cards every call sign and date. A young cryptanalyst in Hut 6 pencils a crib, a guess at a German phrase that might lurk beneath the cipher. A menu is drafted for a bomb run, those breakneck machines that will test rotor positions at impossible speed. The menu is wired into a bomb at an outstation, Stanmore, Eastcote, Adstock, where WRNS petty officers, hair pinned tight under caps, throw the big red switch and flood the room with the clatter of drums and the warm, tinny smell of oil and ozone. Back in Scarborough, the wind dies. Elsie pours tea gone cold and flips to a new log sheet. She has learned to hear the difference between band noise and the faint tail of a German hand key, to tell a coastal station from a bomber wing by the touch of its fist on the ether. Her world is time signals and crackle, and yet the chain stretches under her pencil to places she will never see. In Hut 3, when a break yields German air fleet orders, a wing commander curls the decrypted ribbon and frowns at the wording, translating bereit to ready, Angriff to attack. The message is stamped most secret and cased in red. Couriers tote it to MI6 and the air staff, who will decide whether Coastal Command shifts a patrol, whether an RAF squadron spends fuel to be in the right patch of sky at dawn. It feels small. It is not small. Every intercept you can hold in your hand, gritty with carbon dust, holds a direction. At night the park smells of wet grass and cigarettes. A bicycle bell rings somewhere in the dark. Someone jokes about their phantom roommates, the night shift souls they know only by the grease marks left on chairs, the scrawl on a blackboard that reads today, try wetter Vorhusage. Next. Weather forecast. A crib. The war is built on habits, and habits are levers. The first 50 are the proof those levers move, huts, bombs, and shifts that blur. 20 May 1940, Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire. The bomb room sounds like war by other means. Rows of steel drums turn, stuttering to a stop with a cough that vibrates the floorboards. Warren's petty officer Nora Bailey rubs graphite onto her fingertips by habit as she checks the plugboard connections against the hand-sketched menu from Hut 6. Overhead, the bulbs are dimmed to save power, and the only bright lights are the signal lamps set in the bomb's face. When one winks, she barks, "Stop!" and the momentum winds down like a train easing into a station. On the far side of the grounds, Hut 6 runs on Navy strength tea and adrenaline. Gordon Welchman leans over a Banbury sheet, an ivy of penciled letters curling across cardboard grids. Joan Clark, hair neat in a comb, scans the stop results called in from Stanmore, chewing the inside of her cheek. If we assume kein Besonderheiten in the text, then this menu aligns, she says, no noteworthy events. A phrase German operators love because it says everything and nothing, and says it in too many places to be safe. 8-hour shifts, they swear by them, then slip past the mark. A clerk named Arthur stays on 2 extra hours to index the day's intercepts, stodgy and methodical. A corporal from the dispatch pool rubs sleep from his eyes as he collects another pouch for delivery to MI-14. In Hut 3, a major in shirt sleeves wipes sweat from his brow and dictates a translation of Luftflotte 3's evening order, while a Creed 7B teleprinter chatters in the corner, spitting punched tape that curls like paper ferns at his boots. Across the path in Hut 8, Turing moves with the peculiarity of a mind tuned to some other frequency. He mumbles about diagonal boards and the exploitation of German operator sloppiness, about how a single letter typed twice yields symmetry that can crack the day. You can smell the oil, you can taste the paper dust. Every desk is stacked with forms, registration slips, crib cards, menu drafts, stop lists, translations, dissemination logs. Someone pins a cartoon to a corkboard, "Know your cribs," and below it another sheet, the day's target call signs. The assembly line is not metaphor here, it is a path trodden into the grass, an order of steps drilled into muscle memory. Intercept, register, card, crib, menu, bomb, check, decrypt, translate, evaluate, disseminate. 3 shifts feed the path. 00s 800, 800, 1600, 1600, 2400, and the hour before and after belong to handovers, to hurried briefings where sleep-heavy eyes blink through cigarette haze and a finger stabs a line. This one matters. A messenger bursts in, raindrops on his coat. From Eastcote, multiple stops on 3-rotor Army net. Joan doesn't smile, not exactly, but the corners of her mind lift. Good, let's test the Stecker. The plugboard, the Stecker Verbindungen, is the last knot in the rope. Tests run. A Typex machine, its British keys rattling, is adapted to check the candidate settings, recreating the German machine's path with a British accent. When the plugboard falls, a small miracle happens. Nonsense becomes speech. A district command's noon summary appears on the page, muscled German nouns snapping into comprehension. A map-drunk colonel's career lives or dies on the sudden clarity of it. Welchman steps into the dusk and breathes cool air that smells of lilacs and damp earth. He looks like a man who hasn't slept enough to notice beauty. Headlights swing across the manor facade as another lorry eases in with fuel and spare parts. Bombs eat both. In a barrack, WRN's trainees fold into bunks, blacked-out windows leaking nothing. They will wake and work and eat in the same rotation until their bodies forget daytime. News filters back from the front, coded and laconic. Ultra, this is the code word now. has rerouted a convoy in the Irish Sea away from a wolf pack whose position spilled out of a careless U-boat signal. A Luftwaffe Staffel was diverted. Its planned interception aborted because Hut 3 sent a slim file to Fighter Command that afternoon. They hear this not as triumph, but as proof the assembly line can scale. 50 a week, someone says, running a palm along a silent bomb casing, was yesterday's ceiling. The ceiling is moving. In the canteen, a chalkboard lists shifts and names, but also a quiet plea. Rest if you can. Most of them don't. Sleep gets courted and stood up again and again, as if rest were a lover you keep promising to meet after one more problem falls. Tunney, Colossus, and a line that never sleeps, 30th December 1943. Knockholt, Kent. The hut is colder here, the kind of cold that tastes metallic on the tongue. Wireless set. Number 37 sits on a table beside a national HRO, both smelling of bakelite and dust. Sergeant Bill Anderson flexes his fingers and leans into the headphones. This is not hand-key stuff tonight. This is machine chatter, high-level teleprinter traffic, Bordeaux's 5-bit rhythm, clipped and relentless. The Germans call the cipher machine at the far end Schlüsselzusatz, but the park has given the traffic a nickname, Tunney. He watches an inking printer trace spidery marks on a ticking paper tape as the message pours in from a net where Army Group commanders talk to Berlin as if no one could possibly be listening. By dawn, the paper tapes, perforated and spliced, ride to Buckinghamshire. On the table in the Newmanry at Bletchley, Max Newman stares at loops of tape hung on pegs like laundry. Beside him, a slight young man with a shy smile, Bill Tutt, explains the impossible thing he did. He deduced the structure of a machine he'd never seen, 12 wheels with patterns that drift like tides. They call the handwork tunney breaking, but the scale has outgrown hands. The testery under Ralph Tester is cracking messages with pencil and brain and sheer will, but the hours are a debt that accumulates interest. We need speed, Newman says quietly. In Dollis Hill, a post office engineer named Tommy Flowers runs a hand across the smooth face of a machine he has built out of nerve and audacity. Valves, vacuum tubes, thousands of them, glow with the delicate persistence of coals. He has coaxed electronics into doing logic at a speed that makes mechanical drums seem like cartwheels. Colossus takes in tape at a blur, photoelectric eyes biting the holes, testing wheel settings so quickly the numbers become a texture. On February 1944 at Bletchley, the room with Colossus smells like hot dust and singed air. A Wren operator calls a halt, finger up, and Newman's team huddles to read a stop that could be a key stream pattern. Flowers watches with a curious stillness, as if stunned by the reality of a machine that makes human time feel slow. You can put your hand on the assembly line now and feel it vibrate. Knockholt hears the tunney, punches tapes, and dispatches them. Newmanry feeds Colossus. Testry uses the key streams to read messages. In the next block, a linguist named Margot flicks her eyes over machine transliterated German and breathes life into phrases that would lie flat without her. A coder in Block E re-enciphers the gist into British ciphers on a Typex, keys set by the SLU schedule, wrapping the intelligence in a red cover stamped Most Secret Ultra. A dispatch rider from Special Liaison Unit 5 warms his hands on a mug of stewed tea while a major pins the route to the board, from Bletchley to a Corps HQ near Portsmouth, by backlanes and passwords only he and the guard know. Night to morning, morning to night. 8-hour shifts are doctrine, but there are weeks when doctrine meets necessity and bows. A waif corporal naps with her head on a stack of punched tape reels. A civilian cryptanalyst knocks back cocoa and goes on. In Hut 8, Joan Clark coaxes a tricky naval key while the Newmanry men in shirt sleeves grin like boys as Colossus grabs another wheel pattern in under an hour. The numbers on the board tick upward. The daily decrypts multiply in a way that feels like cheerful violence. 50 a week was a memory. They measure by the day now, by the hour. A piece from Tunney slides across Hut 3's table the way a storm front crosses a coast. Field marshals in Berlin talk about divisions like chess pieces, not realizing the board is glass. A mid-January message mentions rail capacities in Normandy, a quiet glancing blow, a hint, a contour. Another notes fuel allocations to panzer units in the West. Each scrap is folded into the mosaic. You're not told this by a narrator. You learn it because you watch a captain draw arrows on a map and then erase them because of a new decrypt that arrived 5 minutes ago, with the ink still wet. It is an assembly line, but it is also a nervous system, and by early 1944 it is almost alive. The tape runs, the valves glow, the bombs at Eastcote still thump for Enigma nets, Army, Air Force, Navy, while in Block H, Colossus hums for Tunney. Down the hall, a translator coughs. Outside, frost pearls under boots and the breath of men and women on break looks like smoke from a distant fire. Ultra to the front, D-Day's quiet voices. 5 June 1944, Portsmouth, England. The tent smells of oiled canvas and damp maps. Brigadier Stephen McAnochy, Special Liaison Units, fingers the clasp on a red case as rain batters the guy ropes. His driver checks his watch. In an hour, the briefings at Southwick House will begin to feel like gravity. In 12, the channel will be churned with craft, code names their only armor. He opens the case and lays out the products of a world no one here is allowed to name. Each sheet is stamped and numbered, distribution limited to the handful of commanders who will look and never say, who will carry the weight of knowledge that can't be shared. At Bletchley, night watch, hands off today. Colossus needs tending. The operators joke that she catches colds if left unattended. In Hut 6, a young man with ink on his cuffs dashes between desks with the latest Luftwaffe traffic. In Hut 3, a wing commander reads Tunney insights on rail movements through Caen and St. Lo and swears quietly. "This goes now," he says, and the Typex clacks. The clatter a metronome that keeps fear off beat. D-Day is not won by cryptanalysis, but if you stand with the 21st Army Group staff near a farmhouse north of Bayeux on 7 June, with field telephones buzzing and dispatch riders throwing mud and curses in equal measure, you can watch Ultra tug at the edges of chaos. An SLU officer in a plain battle dress cuts open a red sleeve and slides out a page. "From London, sir," he says, and the brigadier at the table reads that Panzer Lehr is assembling near Tilly-sur-Seulles, that roads east of Villers-Bocage are clogged with armor redeploying. The information arrives faster than rumor, truer than reconnaissance that can't see past hedges. Orders are scratched and sent. A battery that had aimed west swings its barrels a few degrees. You can hear the guns. You can taste cordite in your throat. A major's pencil snaps. The SLU man says nothing. His training is to stand and disappear. Back at Bletchley, a wren pours tea, knocks back aspirin, and goes again. 8 hours bleed into 9. In the Numenry, they drive the tapes hard because Berlin is frantic, and frantic operators are sloppy, and sloppiness is a seam. In the testery, a cryptanalyst named Jerry Roberts cracks the final layers on a conference between OKW and OB West, the German High Command and its Western Front commander. The gist is pulled onto a page that smells of ink and panic. Colossus runs and runs, tape a blur, motors soft as a cat purring. Across the channel, Admiral Ramsey re-evaluates patrol patterns because Bletchley's naval decrypts from Hut 4 have put a Wolfpack 50 miles from where Admiralty thought it was. A destroyer's captain, not told why, changes course and misses a torpedo by a rumor's width. Air Chief Marshal Lee Mallory reruns sorties based on Luftwaffe readiness that Ultra read in last night's Enigma. Fuel low, pilots exhausted, airfields cratered, but not dead. Strike where it hurts least, someone says, and the orders go. The chain, Y stations to Bletchley to battlefield, feels elastic and instant. It is neither. It is 1,000 bodies moving in rhythm. At Knockholt, tape streams off a printer faster than the operator can spool it. At Bletchley, a linguist named Peter sits on a crate, scarf around his neck, and translates with his eyes closed the cadence of German command speech so familiar he can hear meaning before he sees it. At a forward HQ, an SLU officer signs for the red case under a tent lantern and delivers it to a general who does not thank him because thanks would be an admission the case exists. By the second week of June, the numbers have lost their sanity. Decrypts per day roll past what any sane organization would believe possible. A ledger in Hut 3 bulges where it used to lie flat. You would think this is victory, pure and simple, but you can see the cost in the sallow faces under khaki, in the way a young waff stares through a wall, mind still sifting Bodo clicks that are no longer in her ears. The 8-hour shift remains the rule. The war makes rule-breaking a habit. 3,000 a day. 15th of September 1944, Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire. The morning arrives in steam off mugs and the rattle of bicycle chains. Block H hums with confidence and exhaustion in equal measure. Colossus number 10 stands in an aisle like a monument you're not allowed to mention. A new intake of Wrens steps gingerly around trailing cables, listening to a petty officer's brisk instructions. Never touch a hot valve. Don't look at the phototube beam. Tape must be smooth. If it snags, you'll hear it before you see it. The air tastes faintly of metal, oil, and the acrid sweet of dust heated again and again. The board in Hut 3 carries a number in chalk that would have seemed lunatic 2 years ago. 3,000 decrypts today, perhaps more tomorrow. The assembly line is a river with tributaries now. Enigma Huts 6 and 8, still spitting field orders and naval traffic, numenary and testery turning Tunney's once impenetrable walls into paper. Translators and evaluators across blocks D and E, pushing words into intelligence that can be used in hours, not days. Typex machines clack like flocks of mechanical birds, re-enciphering Ultra so it can leave the park as something else. Dispatch riders grip handlebars as if the throttle is a promise. In a corner of Hut 6, Joan Clark laughs at something small and human, a penciled doodle of a bomb with a halo. Across the aisle, a tired corporal drops into a chair and immediately starts sorting crib cards, thumbs blackened. Gordon Welchman, older now, still burns like a coal, talking to a new analyst about traffic analysis. The art of knowing what you don't know, from who talks to whom, when, and how often. The Germans give away more by the structure of their nets than by their words, he says, tapping a pencil against an index card, heat softened by too many hands. As autumn presses in, the front runs ahead of the planners and stalls by rivers and towns with names that hurt to pronounce. In a drab tent near Brussels, an SLU officer named Captain Riley opens a red case under a map that shows the Meuse like a thread. He lays out Ultra with the calm of a ritual, enemy order of battle updated at dawn, fuel allocations to armoured divisions, a note that a communications hub in Aachen has gone blind for a day due to a raid whose timing was no accident. A brigadier reads, nods once, and moves a pin. Tell Corps, he says, and no one asks how he knows. Riley's job is to bring the paper and vanish. Back at the park, the shifts bite harder. 8 hours, then 10, then home to a billet where sleep waits like a cat on a sill, indifferent and warm. Some skip it. A cryptanalyst named Ruth stays to finish a menu because she has the shape of it in her mind and fears it will dissolve if she lets go. A WAF sergeant catches a nap with her head on a ledger. Tommy Flowers visits a quiet man walking among giants of his own making, adjusting a Colossus module with the tenderness of a gardener. The valves hold. They glow like embers under a grate. You can feel the velocity in small things. A messenger no longer has time for a cigarette before the next run. A translator starts to speak German when she is tired, then laughs because that means she is alive enough to notice. The 3,000 a day figure isn't a banner, it's a weight. Every break brings a choice downstream. Ultra says a division will pivot left. Do you believe it? Do you risk men on it? Over and over, yes, because the chain has proven itself in 1,000 small ways. A convoy saved from a wolf pack, a counterattack blunted, A railway yard struck the hour before a supply train arrived. "This system is only as strong as its weakest habit," Welchman says to a new recruit. The recruit nods with the solemnity of the sleepless. There is a temptation to make it clean, to draw a line from intercept to victory and call it straight. The rooms at Bletchley won't indulge you. They are messy with tape ends and teacups, with boots shedding mud onto wooden floors, with chalk and ink, and the tired jokes people tell at 2 in the morning when they can't see the line anymore. Yet when a young operator at Knockholt pulls a tunny message out of thin air and a wren at Block H lines up the tape, when Colossus sings and the testry reads and Hut 3 turns it to action, you can stand very still and feel the air change. Somewhere a roadblock goes up that should have been late. Somewhere a battery fires early. Somewhere a captain lives. The number on the board is just chalk. The reality is breath and paper and machine heat and 1,000 pairs of eyes that have learned the difference between noise and meaning. They skipped sleep because the day didn't have enough hours for the work and the war. They turned 50 a week into 3,000 a day because they built a line that never forgot the human hand at the start and the human life at the end.